For those of you who have joined since I introduced myself, my name is Eric Harrington. I'm a senior counsel in the Office of General Counsel at NEA, and I handle, among other things, student debt issues for NEA. Tonight, we have actually lots of news to share. We have things to ask you to do, and most importantly, we have tips and assistance to help you manage your student loans and ultimately to get your student debt canceled and relieved. Go to nea.org/student debt. We have a new website that we have launched, or webpage that we have launched to provide information and support for those of our members who have student debt. And if you scroll down the page, you can fill out a form that will allow us to give you direct support if you need it, and it will help us figure it out. So that website will have background information, news. We put our most recent webinars there, and it also has a survey that will help us figure out how to help you personally. Okay, let me go through this quickly. Our presenters tonight, Ronnie, who you've already met, is with our NEA Government Relations Office. Ronnie's going to talk about the extensions of the CARES Act that are suspending student loan payments through the end of the year. You've already met me. I've mentioned Lindsay Clark already, who's the Director of Partnership at Savvy. Christina Decker and Evan Kurtz are law fellows at NEA who have become real experts on teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness. They are going to talk to you about that tonight. And Sean Manis is a vocal music teacher from Jersey City, New Jersey. And Sean is someone who had a lot of student debt. He has a PhD from, I'm going to get this right, your PhD's from Columbia, I think, or it's the University of Washington. Either one are impressive and amazing. And Sean was someone who was just doggedly determined to get his student debt canceled. And so I want to give Sean the floor to talk about his student debt experience, to let you know that what you're going through is not unique. And most importantly, I think, is that something can be done about it. So with that, Sean, I give you the floor. And go ahead and unmute yourself, Sean.
Yes, that's what I was trying to do right now. All right, so as Eric has pointed out, my name is Sean Ichiro Manis, and I'm a music teacher in Jersey City, New Jersey. A couple weeks ago, I was profiled on NEA Today about how I got $100,000 in student loan forgiven. And it was all because of NEA's help. So thank you to this team who've done a lot for me. I really appreciate what you have done. So a little bit about my story. I've been pursuing the PSLF, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, which requires us to do 120 payments, basically 10 years of payments before the remainder of our student loans get forgiven. Now, the problem I was having was that Fed loan wasn't counting all of my payments. And they wouldn't even tell me why some of those payments weren't being counted. There was 40 payments that weren't being counted. I was very frustrated. They wouldn't even show me records of the payments that I've made. So it was just getting crazy. I didn't have any clear answers from anybody. It was very frustrating. I tried many things to get those records. One thing is, I tried to get my bank records. Finally, I did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information request, and that really gave me some records, but not everything. So finally, I wrote my congressman and the two senators. My senator that did respond was Cory Booker. I'm from New Jersey, and he helped me get those documents. And finally, at the point that I got the records from Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker was at the point that I knew that I was eligible for temporary expanded PSLF. It's a special program. And they basically told me that those 40 payments will count. But until I had the senator intervene on my behalf, I didn't know. Around the same time, I came in contact with Eric and the NEA's Office of General Counsel regarding this issue. These are the people that you see tonight here on your screen. And they helped me through this. And when I applied to get my loans forgiven under that program, that the letter to Senator Cory Booker from FedLoan said I should qualify, I got pushed back again. So finally, NEA's lawyers sent a demand letter, and we were ready to go to federal court earlier this summer. Finally, after that demand letter, my loans were forgiven. And I was also refunded the excess payments, which is almost a year's worth of overpayments that I made. So I was very happy about that. I gotta say, it's been a huge relief to have all this student loans forgiven. And it shouldn't be this difficult for me just to get these student loan forgiveness. The system should work fairly simply, but it took a lot of struggle just for me to get that. The NEA is here to help, and they're trying to create a system, which is what we're talking about today, so that other members can get that help. Just in the last couple weeks since the article went live, a lot of other teachers that I know, other NEA members have contacted me, and they're having the same problem. So there's a lot of people out there that are experiencing this.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for being really dogged and staying engaged and getting your own debt canceled. I've already started this poll, so let me just get a picture and share with all of you how much debt you all have, so you have a sense that you're not alone at all in this situation. And so let me share with you the picture that we all have. Basically, a little more than half of you have 50,000 or less. A little less than half of you have even more than that. And so Sean himself had over 100,000. I'm going to introduce and turn this over to Ronnie, who's going to talk about something that happened today, as well as the CARES Act suspensions that are going to speak directly to this issue. Ronnie, and I'll go back to sharing the slides.
Thanks so much, Eric. I'll get going once we get these back up. There we go. Hi, everybody. So as Eric mentioned, my name is Ronnie Lau. I am a federal lobbyist in NEA's Government Relations Department, and I oversee our lobbying efforts on the Hill for federal student aid issues and also higher education issues. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for you guys for joining us. So wanted to share with you guys some breaking news from today. So earlier this morning, Democratic Senate leaders called for immediate cancellation of $50,000 per federal student loan borrower. This is an effort led by Democratic Senate Leader Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, who have called for an immediate cancellation of $50,000 of federally held student loan debt. Obviously, we've known through the COVID-19 pandemic right now, there's a lot of financial hardship that you guys are experiencing and all different types of Americans right now across the nation. And we know that student loan debt is one of the biggest issues in this crisis prior to even COVID-19 even happened, and it's only been exacerbated in this issue right now. So right now they introduced this resolution calling on the president or the upcoming president to go use their authority through the U.S. Department of Education by powers granted through the Higher Education Act to do such cancellation of federal student loan debt. This would, just to give you guys numbers, this would pretty much end all student loan debt for about 75% of all borrowers in the United States. Again, this is federal student loans, so private student loans would be considered for it, but obviously federal student loans makes up a huge amount of that. It would close the racial wealth gap by about 40%. And again, as I mentioned, it can be done through the Secretary of Education and doesn't actually require congressional action. This can all be done through an executive action through the President's office, and it can be done through the Secretary of Education by powers granted by the Higher Education Act. So we'll wait and see. And obviously with November coming up, we'll see if we get a presidency that will hopefully be able to go do something like that for everybody as a great relief effort for all of you guys, especially during COVID-19. Slide. So we also want to talk about the CARES Act extension. So as most of you guys know by this point, the CARES Act, which was one of the coronavirus relief packages that was passed by Congress and signed by the president a couple months ago, that suspended monthly payments and accrual of interest for your federal student loans starting from March 13th, 2020, and it went all the way to September, the end of this month. The president actually signed an executive order to extend that relief. So now this is going all the way to the end of 2020, specifically December 31st, 2020. So it's the same exact thing. Your payments will be suspended. You're not required to make payments during this point. Your interest will not accrue for these remaining months of this year. That will stay the same. In addition to that, it is also, all these suspended payments are considered towards public service loan forgiveness progress. So even if you were making payments or you weren't making payments, you are still receiving credit towards accomplishing public service loan forgiveness as if you're making an on-time payment, even though the payments aren't required at this point. And again, the qualifying types of federal student loans that are qualified for the suspension are federal direct loans and loans held by directly by the federal government. So there are types of federal programs and federal student loans, such as commercially held commercially held FFEL loans or family federal education loans, or Perkins loans that are held by institutions of higher education of where you attended. Those do not qualify for suspension, unfortunately, and we're working on a lot of efforts right now to making sure that those qualify from here on moving forward. So again, the suspension goes on all the way to the end of the year now. Those suspended payments count towards progress for public service loan forgiveness and is the exact same as what the CARES Act initially did in the first place. In addition to that, so remember the CARES Act also had some credit protections for student borrowers. So it suspended involuntary collections for certain types of federal student loans, those ones that I mentioned earlier. It stopped wage garnishment and federal income tax or Social Security withholdings. It also treats all suspended payments as considered as on time for any credit report purposes. And then the U.S. Department of Education actually had to provide notices before the payments would resume. So before this extension was made by the executive office, you guys were supposed to start receiving notification either through the mail or through email or through phone calls that payments will be resuming after September. Obviously now with the extension happening all the way to December, you guys probably won't be receiving that until about the winter time. So they're required to notify you guys to make sure that you guys know what to do to get back on track once these payments resume, or needed to resume rather. And then finally, the CARES Act also established a tax-free provision for employers. So employers can provide employee student loans for a tax-free benefit at this point. So employers can provide a loan repayment benefit for up to $5,250 annually, and the employee will not pay an income tax on that amount. This applies to any student loan payment made by an employer from now up until 2021 in January. So if some of your districts may be utilizing this, some of you guys may not, but this is a great collective bargaining issue that you guys can raise up with your local union and get this type of benefit in this temporary amount of time up until 2021. And with that, I will turn it back to Eric.
Thank you, Ronnie. Okay, so this is the kind of the meat of what we want to talk about tonight, and that is so now we've got this moment here where we, at least on the federal student loan debt, those loans that are federally held, that are basically loans from the federal government. They may be serviced by Navient or Fed loan, but the federal government has loaned you the money. On those loans, payments should be suspended until, or by law, we're now required to be suspended at least through December. So what can you do during the suspension and before the payments now are scheduled to snap back in January of 2021? So the first thing that we want to make sure that you have on your sort of to-do list is make sure you're benefiting from the CARES Act extension. Make sure that your student debt payments are actually suspended and that you're not paying federal student loans. Make sure that your wages aren't being garnished. Make sure that the public service, that your suspended payments are being counted toward public service loan forgiveness. So we're gonna fill out that a little bit tonight. The second thing that's really important is getting into an income-driven repayment plan if you're not already. For, and the time before the suspension, there would be somewhat complicated advice. We still think you should go to Savvy and get very individualized advice. So I highly recommend doing that. But for the most part, income-driven repayment plans are going to be a very good idea for most of you. Because number one, in order for your payments to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, you have to be in an income-driven repayment plan. And if the suspension is lifted, you want to be in an income-driven repayment plan and have that all done before the suspension is lifted, so that you're paying based on your income. If you then still need additional relief, forbearance or something like that, you can always do that then. It's harder to get into income-driven repayment than it is to use some of these other temporary relief options like forbearance. The other thing, and we're going to talk about this quite a bit tonight, is we want you to take this chance to cancel debt if possible. Don't put it off. And there's two programs: the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, which is famous for being more cumbersome and technical, and few people have been able to thread the needle. Sean is one of those who have been able to do that. But we are here to help to get you to that other side. And we've got a comprehensive approach to help people who should be getting public service loan forgiveness. But we also want you to think about teacher loan forgiveness, which is a specific program. It really should be called teacher loan forgiveness for teachers who teach at Title I schools. If you're at a Title I school, this is a special program for you. It is underutilized, and it's much less technically difficult. And we and Savvy are having all kinds of success getting members' debt at least partially canceled under the teacher loan forgiveness program. We want to really encourage you to use the free Student Debt Navigator, and Lindsay's going to talk in detail about what that is. And we want you to take action at the end of the night. And again, you can go to the website for additional resources. Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, I think I've already covered all of these. I guess the other one that's worth noting is, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about federally held student debt, which for most of our members is the debt you hold. Some of our members, and you may be one of them, have private debt, private student loans, and you should be speaking with your lenders for relief options for the private loans. Okay, let me see if I can stop sharing. I've kind of lost my mouse. Let me see if I can do this. And I want to ask you, about income-driven repayment. And I'm going to talk about this, and you can tell us whether you are an income-driven repayment plan or not. And then I'll see if I can go back to sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, so as I said, if you're not in a income-driven repayment plan, you probably should be. Just the background of this, right? So a standard repayment plan pays off your loan in 10 years. An extended repayment plan gives you a lower monthly payment, but it can take a long time to pay it off. And the graduated repayment plan, it ladders up. You pay more per month as the life of the loan, as the loan goes on over the years. The income-driven repayment plans, and you don't even need to know the details of these, especially if you use Savvy. But the main point of the income-driven repayment plan is that your monthly payment is tied to your discretionary income. And your IDR payment is calculated based on your income, and it's a formula. It's your discretionary income adjusted based on the federal poverty guideline. The takeaway is the less you make, the less you pay. And you can even pay $0 per month. Again, everyone should be paying $0 per month. And our long-term goal here should be that federal student loan payments never come back. But we think you should do this now so that you get credit for these suspended payments under Pslf. And should payments snap back, you are already all set to be in a income-driven repayment plan. If you wait until later, it can take some time to get this stuff settled out. And again, it's another good reason to use Savvy, because Savvy can kind of handle this and get this taken care of. Okay, again, the big benefits are for almost all of our members is that if you're in an income-driven repayment plan, that's the only payment plan that's going to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. And the other thing is, if you have a change in your income, your IDR is going to be based on your next 12 months, not your last 12 months. So if your spouse loses a job or something like that, it can be helpful because it will be payments based on your income coming up, not necessarily what you made before. Okay, and then how to apply for an IDR payment. I just want to show you this. You can go to studentaid.gov. navigate, manage my loans, and apply. But really, you should just use the Savvy tool. It's free for our members, and Savvy can help you get your application in. Okay, let me close this and share the poll results. So yes, this is good. So I can tell you right off the top. So 35% of you, it would be hard for us to get public service loan forgiveness because those are the only, you have to be in an income-driven repayment plan to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So this is a very good snapshot that at the very least, 57% of you should look to see whether you are an IDR and seriously consider getting into one. And again, really the easiest way to do this is go to neamb.com/getnavnea and use the Savvy tool. Okay, now I'm going to turn this over to Evan Kurtz, who's going to talk to you about the public service loan forgiveness program and give you the details of that and encourage you to look at that. Let me see if I want to, if I have a poll that I want to share this. Yeah, let me start with this and get a sense of where you are. So first question for you, have you applied for public service loan forgiveness? And how long have you been paying federal student loans? A good rule of thumb here for us is if you're in that less than a year, do it now. Get this stuff all in order, and then it gets kind of on autopilot-ish. Like if you get this settled early, and Evan's gonna walk through how to get this, get yourself situated so that you're eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Again, Savvy can help you. If you're in the 1 to 5 or even 6 to 10, there's still time to get it straight. If you're more than 10, we really just want to figure out whatever we can do to help. And there are many people under the temporary program, and Sean was one of them, who were not in an income-driven repayment plan the whole time, but are eligible under a temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness program. So I'm going to leave this poll up, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Evan, who can talk us through the public service loan forgiveness program.
Thanks, Eric. So hi, everyone. I'm Evan Kurtz, and I work with Eric at the NEA's Office of General Counsel. So as he kind of said, I'm going to go over basically what the PSLF program is, and then kind of what are the different steps to registering for it, and once you're in it, making sure you achieve that forgiveness. And I'm really happy that Sean was here tonight because he does an excellent job of kind of teeing up the PSLF and temporary PSLF programs and kind of the real human impact that these programs can have and that forgiveness can have in a life. So for those who are talking into this kind of unfamiliar with PSLF, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was created by Congress to try to incentivize people to enter professions such as teaching for public service with the idea that after 10 years, they could have all their loans forgiven. But while the idea was, very noble, after creating it, they created a lot of kind of convoluted requirements that made it very difficult for people to achieve that forgiveness that they were, promised. And Sean was an excellent example of that. So, what we want to do is kind of make sure that with all these requirements, we know that teachers have enough going on to have to read the fine print and learn all these technical things. We want to, as simple as possible, kind of explain what these requirements are and then what tangible steps that you can take to make sure that you're on path for forgiveness if eligible. So there's 5 big ones that we like to focus on, and I'll try to explain kind of what each one is and answer kind of the frequent questions that we get in order to achieve PSLF. So the first one is, and Eric has kind of said this, is being on the right kind of loan. So in order to be eligible for PSLF, you need to have a direct federal loan. So again, private loans would not qualify. So the loans that we hear most often that people ask about would be things like Perkins loans, FEL loans, or Parent Plus loans. If those are the federal loans you receive, those do not immediately qualify for PSLF unless you consolidate your loans into a direct loan. So if you had Perkins loans, but you consolidated years ago into a federal direct loan, then whenever you did that consolidation, your payments potentially became eligible then. We do, however, if you are someone who's not consolidated now, it's important for everyone to understand that if you do consolidate loans, the PSLF counting towards that 120 starts over. So before anyone makes a decision to potentially consolidate their loans, we ask that they talk to someone at Savvy and just make sure that it's the right thing for them. But if you have a federal direct loan, you are potentially eligible for PSLF. The second thing is to have the right servicer. So when you apply for forgiveness at the end of the 120, you need to be serviced by FedLoan. If you are not currently serviced by FedLoan, that is okay. If it's Navient or any of the other mini servicers, you will be switched to FedLoan once you've submitted your first employment certification form for PSLF, which I'm about to talk about. So if you see that FedLoan is not your servicer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're ineligible. It just means that you haven't taken that first step of getting towards PSLF. Third is being in the right repayment plan. Again, Eric kind of talked about all the pluses that we feel that income-driven repayment plans offer. And one of them, as he mentioned, is that it's the only one that is currently eligible for public service loan forgiveness. I will say that with the caveat that Sean mentioned the temporary expanded program, and I'm going to talk to that on the next slide. And that'll kind of explain another route that potentially exists for those who have not been on an income-driven plan. But if currently choosing a plan and hoping to get PSLF, oh, let me go back, Eric. I'll get there next. But if currently choosing a plan, income-driven would likely be the best at this point. Oh, moving the wrong direction, but that's okay. I know we've done this enough that we know them all. Okay. So the fourth one we have is work for the right kind of employer. As this says here on the screen, all public schools, colleges, and universities will count likely towards public service loan employment. So, if you're employed by a school, whether that's as a teacher, I've seen some, we had social workers, psychologists, if you are working full-time at the school as a full-time employee, it's the employer that matters for public service loan forgiveness, not your position. So all that matters, if you are, an employee of, Washington, D.C. public schools or whatever, then it doesn't matter what your position is there. If you are full-time, that is a qualifying employer for public service loan forgiveness purposes. So I mentioned earlier an employment certification form. Basically what that is how you get yourself on the path towards working for public service loan forgiveness. In a couple slides, I'm going to tell people how they can find it. But basically what it will do is you'll have, you'll say when you started working, you'll fill it out, and you'll have someone from your employer, HR, a boss will sign off to verify the information. And once you submit that to your current servicer, whoever that may be, they'll review. And if they in the Department of Ed think that you are potentially qualified for public service loan forgiveness, they will shift your loans to Fed loan, and Fed loan will become your servicer. That's a good sign if that happens to you. It means that it's been accepted at that point, and it means that you are potentially on the path towards forgiveness. And then each year, you're going to be asked to re-verify your employment. A very important thing that we want to make sure people understand is that if you have been making potentially, say you meet all these, I have the right kind of loan, I have the right repayment plan, but I haven't submitted an employment certification form, that's okay. They can be submitted retroactively, assuming you met all other requirements. And that would allow you then to get credit for all these payments that you've made while having the right repayment plan, servicer, and kind of loan. And then the final and fifth one is kind of people talk to tonight is the making of the 120 payments. We get a lot of questions about kind of what that 120 means. They do not have to be consecutive. So if you miss payments or one wasn't on time, or you had to go to a deferral for a couple months before you get back on your feet to make payments again, that is okay. It just needs to be 120 on-time full payments. You cannot, I get this question a lot, you cannot game the system by making multiple payments a month to try to get to that 120. It's only one per month that you can make over hopefully the course of 10 years. Another one we get a lot is if say you're someone who, finished undergrad, went into teaching, then back to get a master's or some sort of secondary education. Anytime you were enrolled in higher education, even if you continued making payments on the original loans, those payments would not go towards the 120. So we do see that happen sometimes, but that's just something to know. However, there are a lot of people who, hopefully hearing this and saying, I know I have a federal direct loan. I either am serviced by Fed loan or would be if I, put an employment certification form, or, and I think I'm on the right repayment plan. We at NEA really, really want to hear from anybody who thinks they're getting close to that finish line or perhaps have already crossed it. As Sean kind of said, we have a few, things that we like to do that we think can help people get over that finish line and ensure that Fed loan and Ed grant the forgiveness that people are entitled to. So we certainly want to hear from you. And also, you can ask these questions to Savvy if you're unsure. They're actually an excellent person to work through to see what your potential eligibility would be. So we just encourage everyone, and if they have questions, if you're not sure if one of these things applies to you, go to Savvy. They can walk you through it, work it out. And if you realize that after talking to them, you are close to that 120, please do feel free to reach out to us because NEA's Office of General Counsel really wants to make sure we're doing everything we can. Sean kind of talked about some of the problems that people have faced with trying to get Fed loan and Ed to live up to the promise of public service loan forgiveness. And so we want to be advocates for all our members that we can. And that 120 payments applies to the public service loan forgiveness program and the temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness, which is the next slide. And so basically the temporary program is the result of, we talked about all the different requirements that, are kind of hard to figure out. Congress realized that something had not kind of clearly been working with people getting public service because so many people were unclear about what the requirements were, what had to happen, what kind of plans they had to be on. So they decided to create a limited pool of money that would go on a first come, first served basis to people who met all requirements of public service loan forgiveness, except the third one we went over, which is being on an income driven repayment plan. So basically what the temporary expanded program does is if you had made prior payments on non-qualifying plans, the most common of those would be a graduated repayment plan, an extended repayment plan, or a standard repayment plan. All of those plans are potentially eligible for the temporary program, assuming you met all the other requirements we discussed before. Public employer, the right type of loan, the right servicer, and of making 120 payments, then it wouldn't matter if you had been on one of those graduated plans earlier. It's also eligible, important to understand it, say you made 4 years of payments on a standard and then switched to income driven, that's okay. That would mean that, hopefully if you were making every month, you'd have 48 payments on a temporary expanded eligible, and then the remaining ones would all be on a standard PSLF. One thing that's really important though is as I said earlier, it's a limited pool of money that is available for temporary expanded. So if you are someone who thinks that you are potentially eligible or have been making payments for close to 10 years, it's really important to see if you qualify now, because we want to make sure that all our members who are potentially could benefit from the temporary program, we want them all to get the forgiveness that they're entitled to. And so that leads to the next slide, which I'm going to talk about the kind of concrete steps that everyone can take to figure out if they can either benefit from the PSLF or the temporary expanded PSLF. We've said it, we're starting to keep beating this drum, but signing up for Savvy is the #1 way we can recommend with that they have service. The service representatives there can look at your information. They can figure out which one you potentially qualify for if you do, or if you don't to this point, they can put you on the path to go forward from here. And they can do all these other steps that I'm about to talk about. So we definitely do recommend that. So if you were someone who, I was talking about the different loans and like, I'm not sure what loan I'm on, I'm not sure who my servicer is, I'm not sure my repayment plan is. One thing I'd recommend is going to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Help tool, as you'll see on the screen. It's as simple as just Googling that and it will come right up, or you can go to Federal Student Aid website and locate it there. And basically it'll just ask you to put in your information, your name, it'll access your records and kind of see if you're someone who potentially is eligible or could be eligible down the road for PSLF. Second thing I recommend is for every single person to, if they think they might be eligible, submit an employment certification form. Same thing, they're available on Federal Student Aid website, probably on your servicer's website, but the simplest way is just Googling PSLF employment certification form. It'll be the first result. You fill it out, it only takes it's a 1 page. And once you get that in, you will learn if you are potentially eligible. And they will say, hey, you'll get a message, you've been switched to Fed loan and you are on your way to public service loan forgiveness. So I definitely recommend anyone who thinks they might be eligible doing that. Many of us I'm seeing through the questions have already kind of taken that step and are in PSLF. If that's the case, recently Fed loan has launched a new tool. And this is part of the efforts from organizations like NEA have been for a long time pressuring Fed loan to make it easier on their customer or the people that they service and the borrowers to actually be responsive and let them know what they need in order to achieve forgiveness. So I cannot vouch for the accuracy of their tool yet as it's newly implemented, but it's now on their website. If you log into your Fed loan account and go to the page on PSLF, you'll see a green button that says check my progress, and it should there let you know how many payments you've made that qualified, where you are, which payments did and didn't qualify, and the reason why those payments might not have qualified. And again, Savvy can also look through these data with you, but hopefully with this tool, it will kind of clarify for people how many payments they have left, how many payments they've made that have counted, if they made some that didn't, the reason why. And another thing that we also encourage everyone to do is whether it's on that tool or whether it's interactions that you've had with your servicer, if you believe the information that you're getting is incorrect or that they have lost payments or that something they've stonewalled you from getting something that you think that is how you think it should work, you are not alone is one thing we want people to know. That's happened. Sean is a testament to that. And we don't want you to hesitate to reach out to Savvy or to reach out to the NEA. Because a lot of people have been in that boat that you are. And it doesn't mean that there's no way out, but it likely means that, there are people out there that may, can help and want to help. And so going forward, we just want everyone to please, be willing to reach out, because we'd love to offer any help we can for public service loan forgiveness, which ends that section on public service loan forgiveness. And Christina is going to talk about another option for forgiveness, which has been mentioned a couple times tonight, which is teacher loan forgiveness. So I will kick it over to Christina.
Thanks. Let me jump in if I could, Christina. So I wanted to pick up on Evan's last point that we asked how many of you have applied for public service loan forgiveness. Roughly 8 out of 10 of you have not. And what we want to say is if you're close to 10 years of paying, like reach out to Savvy, we'll figure it out. There are people who are eligible who don't quite realize it. And because of the temporary expanded program, it's okay if you weren't in an income-driven repayment plan the whole time. So really the core requirements that you really have to worry about is, have you been teaching for 10 years, and have you been paying your loans for 10 years, and you have a direct loan? Kind of everything else we can work on, because we can get your employment certification form in that will get you over to Fed loan, and we can use the temporary program if you're not in the right repayment plan. So don't self-select yourself out. I think one of the problems with the public service loan forgiveness program is A, which is clear, it's super complicated, but B, and because of that, too few people are actually getting their loans forgiven. But that reality that it's complicated and that too few people are getting their loans canceled are deterring other people who should be trying. So I really want to underscore that. Don't self-select yourself out. You'll be surprised at what Savvy and we can do when people reach out. Okay, sorry. With that, I want to, and then let me do one more poll here, Christine, and then I'll turn it over to you. Okay, and so this is our question about teacher loan forgiveness. And there's really 2 questions here for you is all. Are you a teacher at a Title I school? And have you applied? And if the answer is yes, you are a teacher at Title I school, and especially if you've been there 5 years, then there's reasons for applying for teacher loan forgiveness. Now, again, remember, public service loan forgiveness is the program for everyone, meaning all of us, all educators, ESPs, anybody that works in the school. The teacher loan forgiveness program is a specific program for teachers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who literally knows as much about teacher loan forgiveness as anyone on earth. So here you go, Christina.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to walk you guys through the 3 steps to qualify for teacher loan forgiveness. Next slide. So as the name implies, this program is for teachers only. And this one only requires 5 years of teaching to get. Most teachers can get up to $5,000 taken off of their student loans. But if you teach math or science at the secondary level, or special education at any grade level, then you can get up to $17,500 taken off of your student loans. So this may be less money than what you might be able to get under public service loan forgiveness, but depending on how much you owe, it might be a better option for you. There are 3 requirements. The first one is that you must have either direct loans or FEL loans. And FEL loans might show up on your account listed as federal Stafford loans. The second one is that you must be considered highly qualified, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what exactly that means. And the third one is that you must teach full-time at a school or an educational service agency that serves low-income students for 5 years. So this is going to be all of the Title I schools. But if you're not sure if your school is a Title I, there's also a way for you to double check that your school qualifies for teacher loan forgiveness. One important thing to note is that if you do decide to pursue teacher loan forgiveness, you should know that it will reset the clock for getting public service loan forgiveness. And that's because there's a rule that you can't apply the same years of service to these 2 different kinds of loan forgiveness programs. You can, however, receive teacher loan forgiveness and then decide to pursue public service loan forgiveness for the rest of your student debt. Next slide. So what does it mean to be highly qualified? For teacher loan forgiveness, there are two basic requirements. You must have a bachelor's degree and you must be licensed to teach in your state. And the third thing that you have to do is you have to show that you are qualified to teach the subject that you are teaching. So whether you teach elementary education or you're teaching middle school math or high school English, you have to show that you are qualified to teach that subject. And you can do this one of three different kinds of ways. You could have a state license or certification to teach the subject that you're teaching. You could have a bachelor's degree where you majored in that subject, or you could have a graduate degree in the subject. So those are the three different kinds of ways that you can show that you are highly qualified. Now, if you'd like to double check if your school or your educational service agency qualifies for teacher loan forgiveness, the Department of Education has a list of all of them, and it's called the Teacher Cancellation Low Income Directory. And you can find that, I've got the link here on the slide. You can also find it pretty easily just by Googling Teacher Cancellation Low Income Directory, and it'll come up in your Google search. And I've got an example here on the slide of what this directory looks like. Basically, you're going to put in your state and put in the year that would be year number 1 of your 5 years, and then click search, and it'll pull up a list of all of the schools and all of the ESAs in your state that qualify for teacher loan forgiveness. You can also narrow this down by typing in the name of your school, but just be aware that sometimes they abbreviate the names, and so it may not come up in your search initially if they have abbreviated it. That's why I recommend just pulling up the list of all of them so that way you won't miss it. Now, if after listening to all of this, you are interested in pursuing teacher loan forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness, then I highly recommend that you guys check out what we're going to talk about next, which is NEA's Student Debt Navigator. And we've got Lindsay here to talk to you guys about this service.
You're on mute, Lindsay. And let me share these results on the teacher loan forgiveness. So
okay, great.
Looks like 6 out of 10 of us are at Title I schools, and fewer than 3 in 10 have applied. So those of you who have been rejected, often, and Lindsay can talk to this, and Christina can talk to this. Many of the folks who do get rejected are for really pedantic reasons. There's little technical problems with their application, and those can be resolved. And if you've already been rejected, you can get those resolved by trying again. And this is a great example of the kind of work that Savvy can do, and Lindsay can, and her team can help with those, even those who've had their applications rejected. Of course, if you have not replied and you're at a Title I school, or at least considered it, it's certainly something that you should consider. And with that, I want to turn this over to Lindsay, who can talk about the free NEA Student Debt Navigator that can put all of this complicated stuff together and make it actually usable for you. With that, Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Great. Okay. You know, if everyone is feeling a bit overwhelmed at this point in the presentation, that's completely normal. That's how you should feel. These programs are complicated, confusing, and that's why we saved the Savvy tool for last, because we're about to show you how we can help you to navigate these processes with as little effort as possible on your end. It can feel like a full-time job sometimes. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Savvy team who's on the Q&A and the chat box. Mose, Ian, Aitana, and Catherine, they are all part of our support team, and they work behind the scenes with teachers every day. And so they are working hard to answer all of your questions and are dedicated advocates and borrowers themselves. So they love being here and working with you tonight, and appreciate all of their hard work as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on to the next slide. Great. And on to the next one, actually, I think we can probably get perfect. So, you know, all of the speakers here tonight have really well laid out sort of the landscape around repayment and forgiveness, whether it's teacher loan forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness. And obviously, it is a bit complicated and overwhelming. So the first thing that Savvy is going to help you to do is basically a diagnostic test to check your eligibility and qualifications for these programs. We're going to be able to identify and flag if there's anything that's going to trip you up in the process. Maybe you have the wrong type of loan. We're going to be able to flag that and then help you take that corrective action. All right. So if you're wondering right now whether you've got the right things or whether you're eligible, don't worry. We're going to be able to take you through and make sure that you either fulfill all those qualifications, and if you don't, we're going to help you to get there. In addition, when you go through the Savvy tool, you're going to see a personalized repayment and forgiveness plan. I'm a borrower. I've used so many of these online calculators that sort of compare your situation to national averages and things like that. So unhelpful. The Savvy tool really is customized to you as a borrower and going to show you down to the cent what you could potentially save and enroll on, for example, on an IDR plan. And then we take it a step further. So we not only show you what you could be eligible for and what might be your best options, we then sign and submit all of the paperwork on your behalf. And anyone familiar with the paperwork process here or who's tried to submit applications knows that it sounds pretty easy, but in reality, it's a lot harder. And these servicers will deny you for the smallest clerical error possible. And we see borrowers get rejected 4 or 5 times on their applications before getting finally accepted. So we take care of all of this digitally. All right, we pre-fill those applications. You need only sign off. You can do it from your phone. We submit them quickly, accurately, efficiently. We have a 99% acceptance rate on these, and that gets you onto the program, saving and tracking those credits right away. We not only submit the application, okay, we then monitor that application to make sure that it reaches its desired outcome. This is what I like to call application abyss. So I'm sure many of you might be familiar with this. You submitted an application to your servicer. Maybe you hear back and you got rejected. Maybe you hear back and the servicer is counting your credits at 10 and you think you should have triple that. Or maybe you haven't heard back at all and you're wondering what's going on. All of these things are what borrowers have to deal with their servicers, right? Sort of limbo of things once you submit that application. We have a monitoring system set up, so we know exactly how long those applications should take, how long it should take your servicer to review them. Once it starts getting past that deadline, we are the first to reach out with you to your servicer on the phone, ask them the questions, track that application down, and escalate it if need be. So we're going to be the ones on top of that to make sure that it gets that, to that desired outcome, hopefully of forgiveness. All these programs, as far as IDR and the Pslf program around recertification, require that you basically submit these forms year over year in order to either stay on the program or track your credits. Again, this is something that Savvy can help you do. You don't have to worry about any of those deadlines or submitting those documents. We do that all for you digitally. We also monitor for new program and policy changes, and this is particularly relevant right now. Our background is in policy and advocacy. We are based in Washington, D.C., and we were, so the first to know about the CARES Act coming through. We made sure our tool was updated. We, educated our borrowers. Same thing when things got extended most recently. And if there are any sort of new programs or policy changes coming through, in the next couple of months, you'll be the first to hear from us and all of our friends at NEA. And last but not least, and I think this might be one of the most compelling aspects of the Savvy tool and program itself, is the ability to receive one-on-one support with student loan experts. This is, as a borrower myself, and I'm sure, and hopefully some of you might have even interacted with some of our support team, an awesome part of this, this benefit, the ability to call in, talk to someone real for 15 minutes, get guidance on your student loans. We are sort of unbiased third-party advocates who are going to do whatever we can to deliver that best outcome possible, whatever it may be. And you can utilize, us to whatever capacity you see fit. So that being said, at this point, I'm going to sort of take you through the tool itself. If you want to follow along while we go, that's great. If not, you can do it later on at home. But you're going to want to head over to neamb.com/getnavnea. All right, we'll put that in the chat box as well so you can click that link directly. That's neamb.com/getnavnea. I'll give you guys a second just to get over there. Great, thanks, Aitana, for putting that in the chat. You're going to sign into your NEA member benefits account, and that's how you're going to be able to access the tool. Savvy is provided as an NEA member benefit, one of many amazing benefits through the member benefits portal. So I highly encourage you to check out the other benefits if you haven't already, but this is where you're going to be able to access the Savvy tool. So you're going to sign into your account to check your eligibility. And once you've signed in through your NEAMB account, you'll be brought to this homepage on the Savvy tool. And this is sort of where you're going to get started. We go on to the next slide. Great. Okay, so we start out by asking borrowers 2 pretty basic questions that we hope most of them would know the answer to off the top of their head. And that is their expected income for 2020 and their current federal student loan payment. Now, if you are benefiting from the CARES Act right now and your current payment is $0, don't put $0, put what your payment was beforehand. That's going to be a better indicator of your actual student loan payment. So if we go on to the next screen, in this example, it's going to show that this borrower's expected income is $40,000 and their current student loan payment is $377. They go ahead and click Get My Estimate, and it'll bring them to the next screen. Great. And just based off of those two numbers alone, we can determine that this borrower could potentially lower that payment down to $177, so a savings of around $200. And that's just looking at an income-driven repayment plan. We haven't even begun to explore their sort of qualifications and eligibility around forgiveness, which we're about to do now. They go ahead and click Let's Get Started, and it's going to bring them into the tool. And it sort of has the look and feel of almost like a TurboTax for your student loans. We're going to ask you questions around your tax filing status, your income, your employment. All of this is to help you identify, or us identify, the optimal repayment and forgiveness plan for you. You're going to want to keep an eye on the number in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, that $121 a month. For some of you, it actually might be in the top left-hand corner. We had a sort of a new overhaul to the tool, so it looks a little bit shinier. Either the bottom or the top left side, you'll see that estimated monthly payment. That's going to update in real time based on the information you're entering into the tool. So if you remember in the previous screen, we estimated this borrower could lower their payment down to $177. Well, right away, we've decreased that even further to $121. And that's because this borrower has indicated that they have a dependent and that that dependent is a child. So for every child dependent that you have, it lowers that monthly payment by about $50, all right? Even unborn child dependents. We also use something called Smart Skip technology. And basically, depending upon the answers that you give, the flow of the tool could look slightly different. So in the example you see here, this borrower is single. They file their taxes as a single person. Let's say they were married filing jointly. We'd need to ask them questions about their spouse because their spouse's signature is required on the IDR application at the end of the tool. So it's going to be completely customized based on your information. If we move on to the next screen, we're going to show you a look at the employment section. So we have a database of all of the eligible PSLF employers, as well as school districts and schools in the country, and those that are Title I eligible. All right. So if you were, sort of curious as to whether your school qualified or whether it was on that list, you can find out through us here at Savvy and through going and entering in your information into the tool. So we're going to ask you what schools you worked for and whether you were full-time. And if we indicate that this school could potentially be a Title I school and qualify you for teacher loan forgiveness, we're also going to ask you the questions around the teacher loan forgiveness program to determine what you could potentially be eligible for there. So if we go on to the next screen, you'll see some of these questions, right? So do you teach in a full-time setting? How many years have you been teaching there? Are you highly qualified? Do you teach special education, math or science, et cetera, right? So we're going to be able to identify whether you're going to be eligible for that $5,000 or that $17,500. We also ask if you worked previously for any nonprofit or government agencies. This is because we not only help you to certify your credits for your current employer, if you're looking to go for PSLF, we also help you to go back in time and certify any previous credits for any previous employers. And this is really where borrowers struggle on their own, and it becomes such a full-time job. We will literally set up these applications and digitize them and track down borrowers' HRs from years ago from across the country. We get those signatures, they're filled out correctly, and we can submit them on their behalf. How many of you have printed out paper copies? Your HR didn't fill it out correctly, you forgot to attach it, right? It's a headache. We do that all for you. You don't have to leave your couch, all right? On to the next screen. Oh, sorry, one more back. Perfect. So at this point, you'd be prompted to create a free Savvy account. And this is just your first, last name, email, and password. This is because we're about to enter into the loan sync portion of the tool, where we're going to be syncing over your secure loan data. And we want you to be able to access that securely at a later point in time. So we just asked you to create that so we can save that information. Once you do, you can go ahead to the next screen, and you'll be able to enter into the loan sync portion. And this is one of the neatest aspects of the technology itself. So most borrowers have on, anywhere between 5 to 6 different loans on average, different disbursement dates, interest rates, balances. And I think I personally have about 12 different loans. If you knew all of that off the top of your head, I'd be thoroughly impressed, but most borrowers don't. So we allow them to sync their loans by indicating what service they have, in this case, Navient. They enter in their username and password credentials for Navient, and it's going to pull over that loan data quickly and accurately. It gives us the best snapshot of exactly what's going on, okay? Now, the programs we talked about here tonight are eligible only for federal loans. However, private loans, if you have them, are an important part of your student loan picture, all right? It's a small percentage, but most people who have private loans also have federal loans because you take out those private loans after you've exhausted your federal options. If you do have private loans, I highly encourage you to sync them here just like you do your federal. So you would do the same thing. Enter in your third party or commercial lender, maybe Wells Fargo, Chase, Discover, whatever it may be. Enter in your username and password credentials, and it's going to sync over that same data. And what that will do is it'll flag for our support team that that's a private loan, and we'll be able to reach out to you separately and handle those separately to look at what options might be best. All right. So we don't want to leave private loan borrowers out in the cold. We help both federal and private loan borrowers, get the desired outcome that they are looking to achieve. Once you've synced those loans, this is a quick look at a screenshot of what that looks like for, from the borrower side. Great. So all of that information, loan amount, balance, interest rate, disbursement date, all of those things, that information gets synced over from Navient. And once you've entered that in, you can go on to the next screen, and it's going to be basically, one more back, sorry about that. Great. So once you've synced those loans, you're basically right now at the results page. This is sort of the final step. And this is where we've identified for the borrower the optimal repayment and forgiveness plan for them. So in this case, by enrolling in the PAYE plan, P-A-Y-E, which is a type of income-driven repayment plan, we estimate this borrower could lower that monthly payment down to $121, so a savings of around $250, and we project that forgiveness to be around $69,000. They can expand below for more information, read more about these programs. So maybe you didn't, attend a full-blown webinar and get all the education that we received here tonight. You could still learn about these programs in detail by going through the tool. Now, if this sounds good to you and you think you are ready to proceed, you would be prompted normally to do one of two things. You can either proceed with your free DIY account, which essentially we are very transparent about the fact that these are free federal programs that borrowers can enroll in through the Department of Education. And so we would provide you with a link to go submit that application on your own. However, for borrowers who are looking for our assistance in doing the heavy lifting, there is the essential plan. And normally there is a cost to that essential plan, but I'm so excited to be able to announce that this is completely free for the first year for NEA members who are signing up now. And this is, thanks to NEA Members Insurance Trust, that they're providing you with this ability and this premium sort of membership for your first year. I can't underscore how much of a game changer this is. I mean, we're talking now, you went from having to do all things on your own to you've got a team of experts and advocates and support basically in charge of your whole case and submitting these applications for you. I mean, it's a dream come true, especially for so many borrowers who have struggled to get past certain points and get those applications accepted. All right, so we do everything digitally, as I'm about to show you. You have access to our savvy support experts whenever you want. Great, so this is a look at some of those features. So I mentioned this digital enrollment. This is a look at the income-driven repayment plan application, about 6 to 7 pages long. This is just the first page. We pre-fill the entire application digitally. We send it over to you via email. You need only enter your social security number and e-sign at the end, and it comes right back to us, and then we review, submit right to your servicer. I mean, within minutes this happens. The faster we submit, the faster you get onto that program and the faster you're able to save and move forward. On the next screen, we're going to talk about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Employment Certification Form. So same thing here. On the left-hand side is the borrower's portion. Pre-filled, they need only enter their social and e-sign. Comes back to us. We've set it up to go right to that employer. We pre-fill that employer's information so to avoid any error. We have the contact at that school's HR. It goes right to that contact. They're able to sign off, and it comes right back to us. We review to make sure everything looks accurate and then submit to that servicer. So when we're submitting these forms, the expertise that we have baked into this entire system is, really because of working with all of you all and listening to teachers and hearing what issues they were having, around these applications, and basically building out a tool that was, foolproof, especially for whether it's you, the borrower, or the HR team as well. So we submit that on your behalf to FedLoan when done. And we do this for not just your current employer, but any previous employers, however many that might be, 3, 4, 5, doesn't matter. We will track down and certify those previous credits. Moving on to the next screen, this is a look at one of our newest features that I'm really excited to tell you about, the borrower dashboard. So when you create your free Savvy account and log back in at any point in time, this is the first thing you're going to see. And this is a way for us to be transparent with you, the borrower, about exactly where you are in this process. I'm sure many of you might be familiar, but forgiveness, whether it's teacher loan forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness, is not a 1 to 2 week thing, right? This is a cadence of touch points over weeks, months, years, potentially. And so it's really helpful for us to be, completely transparent with you, the borrower, set expectations, and have a place where you can see exactly where you are in that process. Because I know it's so easy to grow impatient, when these things are taking a long time. You can also upgrade and downgrade your plan or invite family members from here. And most importantly, you can contact one of our experts. So if we go on to the next slide, I'm going to show you where you can get in touch with our expert team while going through the tool. So you can always, in the bottom right-hand corner of every screen on the Savvy tool, is that green support button. You can click that to send a message to our a message to our support team. Sometimes they might be on chat during the day. I don't think so now, but you can send a direct message to them, or you can call that direct line, that 833-615-1376, and they are standing by and ready to help, all right? And when you send that message to support, you can, ask and request to set up a one-on-one call, you're looking for guidance around your student loan situation, whatever it may be, we're here to help and provide that. Moving on to the next screen, great. So what does this mean for you as a borrower, all right? And I think that, one of the most important points I want to make clear to everyone, because no two borrowers are the same. Borrowers are coming to us from all, sort of points on the spectrum of repayment. No matter where you are, perhaps you could be in default or wage garnishment or delinquent, or maybe you are just graduating and, still in your grace period. Maybe you're already on an IDR, sort of a power user, and you think you're on your way. Wherever you are, we are able to help. We can verify that you're on the right repayment plan or the lowest one and help you with your forms going forward. We can get you started in the process. We can also help you get out of default and wage garnishment and take you through a rehabilitation plan. So, if you are one of those people who who knows that they're in default and needs help, please reach out to us. Again, we can help all borrowers. And currently, other teachers or other NEA members are saving a little over $2,000 a year in reduced payments. And that's, again, just through those IDR applications. And so from my perspective, forgiveness is something that has been so notoriously difficult for many to achieve. The experts at Savvy, we are experts because we do this day in and day out. We work with you all and the servicers, and we've sort of perfected this process to make it so much easier for you. So you are all doing a wonderful job, on the front lines and educating our citizens in our country. Let us take care of you and help you get this forgiveness, or whatever outcome might be the best one for you. So I think this last page is just going to be the support and contact information. Great. So that is our support email address dedicated to NEA. That's partners+NEA@buysavvy.com. And again, that's that telephone number that I showed you earlier. We are available Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. All right. And you might even be interacting with some of the support team members on the call today. Aitana, Mose, Ian, thank you so much for joining us again. Back over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Lindsay. I know we're a little over time, so I just want to end tonight. First, I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank Sean for sharing his story. I want to thank all of you for participating. I want to thank the Savvy people who've answered your questions. If you didn't get any of your questions answered, remember you can go to nea.org/student debt, fill out that form, and you can of course use the Savvy tool to get yourself in the pipeline to get your to get support in your own student debt story. Before I leave, I want to make sure that we take a step back and look at the big picture of this. And the reality of all of this complicated system is we need comprehensive student loan cancellation now. We need it to provide relief during the pandemic, and we need it to stimulate our economy afterwards. And so I urge you to go to edvotes.org/loan relief. There are actions that you can take urging Congress to cancel student debt. We really want to support the Schumer-Warren initiative that was launched today, and they are asking the next Secretary of Education to cancel $50,000 of student debt. And so I have one last question for you, and you can fill this out as I'm finishing up. So go to edvotes.org/loan relief. This is a little bit of this is a push poll, sure. But there, in my mind, there is no good reason not to cancel at the very least $50,000 of debt. And remember, This is debt that the federal government already holds. This is like your uncle gave you $500 to fix your car, and he said, you know what? Forget about it. You need the money. It doesn't cost him a nickel at that point. He doesn't have to go get a second job. He doesn't have to do anything. And that's where the federal government is. They just have to make you stop paying them at very high interest rates too. Their banks are borrowing from the federal government at like 0.001%. Students are borrowing at 6 or 7 or 8%, 5 now, and some of the other ones. So the federal government is collecting interest on debt that's harmful to us all, and they just need to cancel it. So go to that, cancel large swaths of student debt now. And then the other thing that's very important is be a student debt voter this fall. Student debt cancellation will be and should be a big issue when people vote on it. And the records in this election are pretty clear. The current president has actually attempted several times to end public service loan forgiveness altogether. And Savvy can speak to this Secretary DeVos has not been helpful, to put it mildly, in actually implementing the program. It should not be this difficult. And she has made it more difficult. As I said before, the Senator Schumer and Warren plan to cancel large swaths of student debt is affirmed by Joe Biden. He has a similar plan to cancel student debt through executive action. It won't even take Congress. It just means we have to change the president and the Secretary of Education. So I urge you to be a student debt voter this fall. And with that, we're very short on questions. You feel free to use the NEA.org/student debt to submit any questions you have. There's the survey form on that website, and we can hang around here and answer any questions that you might have in the Q&A if there's still some that are kind of outstanding. But if we close this out tonight and you didn't get your question answered, be sure to fill out that form and we'll try to get to you as well. And with that, I want to thank everyone and wish you well, and thank you for what you're doing in your schools, in your community, and wish you a good night.
Hey, Eric, I was just going to say one more thing before we closed out, which was, you all are sort of the best advocates for yourselves, and the information that you might have learned tonight, while you are now informed, for every person that's informed, there are 10 other people who don't know about it and are misinformed. And so you are the best resource to help us spread the word and make sure that every borrower understands their options. So I encourage all of you, if you have student debt, you usually know someone with student debt, whether it's in your family or your colleagues or friends, to spread the word, to make sure, do they know what loan type they have? Because it could impact their eligibility. All of these things, be the best sort of ambassador for this that you can, because I think that's truly the only way we're going to sort of tackle this crisis. It starts with all of you. So just wanted to mention that.
Perfect. Thank you. And it's a great spot to end. And we'll close the meeting now. Thanks.